First and foremost, Merry Christmas to everybody. Happy holidays and Happy New Year. Stay safe out there. Hope you're enjoying yourself. Hoping you're having a beautiful Christmas. And God bless you all. Paul predicts Speaker will be ousted in 2025. This is in the Hill. Mike Johnson will almost certainly not be Speaker. I think that Matt Gaetz has the inside track to be Speaker of the House. I think he already has the speakership if he wants it. Hit subscribe to this channel right now to my super chat. Thank you so very much. Paul Bartlett, thank you. This is an article in the Hill. Paul, thank you so very much as always. And to my super chat, thank you. Paul predicts, Senator Rand Paul predicts Speaker Johnson will be ousted in 2025. We'll get to that in a second, but I want you to listen to Rand Paul, and then I want you to, and we'll talk about the fact that Johnson is not popular, especially with the spending bill. He caved to Democrats as always, and he acted in a way that Pelosi wouldn't act. See, the way Democrats work is they don't give an inch. They do not give an inch to Trump or Republicans ever. They impeach at the drop of a hat. They will impeach based on a phone call. Based on a speech that the Supreme Court defended and protected Trump, stated that he had every right to perform a speech and that he was not liable for any criminal activity that other people he never met decided to commit. So Democrats will go after Trump. They will demand congressional testimony. They'll start the Mueller probe. And Republicans, the only reason Republicans took the House, the Senate, every battleground state, the popular vote, the presidency, and now the Supreme Court is because of Donald Trump. There are never Trumpers or old school Republicans that wish there would be somebody more palatable for media. It's like, well, you would lose everything. You would not have the Supreme Court. You certainly wouldn't have the Senate. You wouldn't have the House with Nikki Haley or Chris Christie or Mitt Romney as the nominee. The old school Bush-Cheney Republican is no longer relevant. It's actually no longer relevant, a serious political liability for Republicans who actually want to win. And they don't embody this kind of nostalgia that never Trumpers have. Oh, can't we have a good Republican? Like George W. Bush, they say Trump was a narcissist. He wasn't. I mean, if you look at what he did, we had record low poverty, record highs in household median income. He brought Americans home from never-ending military conflict in two regions, okay? The Doha Agreement called for a May 1st, 2021 withdrawal. Okay, that was ignored completely by Biden and into a haphazard summer withdrawal that cost the lives, that directly led to 13 Americans losing their lives and over 100 Afghans. Okay, because Democrats utilized our moral enemies to evacuate, which was not part of the deal. But the point, ladies and gentlemen, is that you look at George W. Bush, that's the height of narcissism President Obama removed a leader and caused one country in Libya to be destabilized for an entire generation, influencing the rest of that region, destabilizing the rest of that region, but that's not narcissism. And then you have George W. Bush, who invaded and sent Americans to never-ending military conflict based on faulty, flawed intelligence that anyone could see was completely contrived. And like John Brennan said, I don't do evidence, I do intelligence. Anyway, the point is that Matt Gaetz is at the forefront now of discussion among a lot of people to be Speaker of the House. Mike Johnson is too closely aligned to the Kevin McCarthy and to the never Trump. Well, Kevin McCarthy could have been an amazing Speaker of the House. All he had to do was play ball for a second with Matt Gaetz. But let's go ahead really quickly. Let's listen to a recap, and then we'll get to Rand Paul.
The future of House Speaker Mike Johnson could be in jeopardy come the new year. Some Republicans say they won't support him over his handling of the government funding bill. Our Washington correspondent Maddie Biertemple has more on what to expect in the new Congress.
House Republicans will have a razor-thin majority when lawmakers are sworn in January 3rd. Their first vote will be electing a leader, and there's already some signs House Speaker Mike Johnson could face a challenge. Some allies of President-elect Donald Trump say House Speaker Mike Johnson has to go.
Should Johnson be Speaker of the House?
Steve Bannon criticized Johnson's attempts to work with Democrats to keep the government funded.
It's 1,500 pages of sellout to Hakeem Jeffries.
Ultimately, a different version of the bill passed after Elon Musk and President-elect Trump weighed in. But the latest spending showdown has shown fractures among Republicans. Tennessee Congressman Tim Burchett isn't happy with the process.
This just stinks. That's why America doesn't trust government, and it's for good dadgum reason.
Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massey told The Hill he won't back Johnson for Speaker. But finding someone new isn't so easy. California Republican Congressman Tom McClintock told The Hill Sunday.
The problem with replacing Mike Johnson is that you've got to find somebody in his right mind who wants to take that job. and anybody who wants it obviously isn't in his right mind.
Senator Rand Paul suggested on X that Elon Musk should be Speaker. Johnson addressed questions over leadership last week, saying he talked to Musk about that.
When I said, hey, you want to be Speaker of the House? I don't know. He said, this may be the hardest job in the world. I think it is. But we're going to get through this.
Johnson needs 218 votes to keep the gavel. That means he can't afford to lose any other Republicans, assuming everyone is present and voting. There are a few who've said they're undecided. In Washington, I'm Maddie Biertemple.
So all Matt Gaetz has to do is a privilege resolution to release all the 17 plus 15 to 17 or more $1 million in Democratic Congresspeople and Republican Congresspeople who have paid to keep their allegations, lawsuits, accusations silent in what amounts to congressional hush money. Okay, the difference being with Stormy and Trump, it was 1,000% consensual if it did happen. It probably happened, but whatever. It was 1,000% consensual. It was basically a business transaction if it did happen. Okay, but there's like $17 million that Congress paid to silence people accused potentially of acts similar or far worse than Matt Gaetz was accused of. And so Matt Gaetz, number one, was not charged with a crime. Number two, he can simply release through a privileged resolution, and he'll have support among a great many Trump Republicans. There's like something like 19 House Republicans in Florida and 25 or over 25 in Texas. Just in Florida and Texas alone, Matt Gaetz could have a strong push for Speaker of the House, especially when they say, well, there's still holdouts because Kevin McCarthy despises Matt Gaetz. Again, Kevin McCarthy could have been a fantastic and amazing Speaker of the House. All he had to do was play ball with populist Republicans. That's it. That's all he had to do. And he chose not to, and I don't know why. But for the people who are aligned perhaps with Kevin McCarthy, you simply release all the information. That's all you have. That's all Matt Gaetz has to do, or Marjorie Taylor Greene, or a whole bunch of Republicans that support Gaetz. That's all he has to do to become Speaker of the House. But let's continue with Rand Paul. Hit subscribe to this channel right now, ladies and gentlemen.
Trust government? Can we trust government to use FISA appropriately and legally? Absolutely not. Americans shouldn't be spied on by their own government. The Fourth Amendment was put in by our founding fathers to protect us. FISA doesn't obey the Fourth Amendment. And so Speaker Johnson was incredibly wrong. He broke the tie. He voted with the Democrats. Here we have the leader of the Republicans in the House votes with the Democrats against a warrant requirement. We also have Speaker Johnson voting for the spending package, once again, with the majority of the Democrats. As I see it now, I'm not sure there's a difference between Mike Johnson being in charge and the Democrats being in charge. The debt.
So that's an important statement. Okay. The reality is that you cannot, if they threaten to shut down the government, then they shut down the government. The Democrats shut down the government during Trump's administration because Trump wanted a wall to protect the country from what we see in the New York subways right now. Okay, so, and Trump even said to Schumer, oh, I am ready to shut down the government. Yes. And Schumer said, oh, okay, you see. And the mentality was that would be blasphemous to shut down the government. It's like, well, that's just politics. And I don't get why it's so important. I don't get why it's so important for a traditional Speaker of the House. Pelosi didn't care. Why does Mike Johnson? If you're not getting what you want, and there's too much superfluous spending, there's too much pork in the spending bill, then utilize whatever leverage you have. Just utilize whatever leverage you have. The average American doesn't care about national parks, not being funded for a day or two or three. Then the funding comes back anyway. So I just don't get it, but let's continue.
The deficit this year will be $1.5 to $2 trillion, and that's Mike Johnson's bill. He put it forward. He supported it with a minority of Republicans, with a majority of Democrats. This is not using the power of the purse. This is abdicating the power of the purse.
Well, why? Why do you think that is?
You know, people have to be strong in their convictions. He was seen as a conservative before he came to the speakership, but now he puts a tweet out the other day saying, oh, they whispered to him about 702, how important it is, and now he's completely changed and lost all his principles on the idea that you shouldn't spy on Americans without a warrant. On the spending issue, they say, oh, government will shut down. But if the Democrats want this level of spending, we want this level, a compromise would be splitting the difference. The Democrats got everything they want in the spending, and all the hawks got what they want too. This is a problem. On the Republican side, we have people who want unlimited military spending, and then the Democrats want unlimited welfare spending, and they get both. But Johnson hasn't.
And the Democrats also want unlimited military spending as well. The spending for veterans, for the VA, to take care of soldiers and their families and the veterans and their families, that's good. We should spend as much as possible for veterans, okay, and to keep our military strong. Yes, but Trump is the anti-war choice because he doesn't want to send Americans, or he would be not just reluctant, he would be against sending Americans to counterinsurgency conflicts. I have written against counterinsurgency conflicts in The Hill, The Huffington Post, Salon, The Roanoke Times, other publications. You can read my writing at hagoodman.com. That's what drives me. That's how you go from Bernie Sanders to Donald Trump. And that's how you realize that Bernie Sanders was a tool and basically phony. A tool for the Democratic Party and a fake and a phony politically. He was cheated in his primary, just like Biden was. Neither of them said anything, but Trump would never let that happen to his voters, to the country. Okay, so the same political monstrosity that sent Americans to never-ending military conflict also cheated Bernie Sanders in 2016. Also completely railroaded Biden after he won a primary in 2024. It's the same thing. All these left-leaning, quote-unquote, progressives and leftists and liberal Democrats, and, they're still fighting against Trump. They lost the House, the Senate, every battleground state, the popular vote, the presidency, the Supreme Court. They lost everything politically, yet they're still arrogant. Because some people are too stupid to realize that their political power and influence is declining exponentially as we speak. But that's a good thing. You want imbeciles to be your political adversaries, so that's a very good thing. But the problem is that here you have Mike Johnson, who Trump just won a landmark victory, a monumental landslide victory, essentially a landslide in today's day and age, actually a landslide. And especially with 90+% negative media coverage, Trump wins a landslide victory, everything he could possibly want, and then Mike Johnson capitulates. Why?
Held his ground. He has power. He has a majority. Use the power of the purse, Speaker Johnson. Do something to make us think you are different than the Democrats. But so far, I don't see a lot of difference.
Wow. All of this while the border is yet to be secured.
Exactly. We shouldn't, look, we have 41 Republicans in the Senate. So while I blame Speaker Johnson, I blame 41 senators in the Senate. We could stop the Senate and they could do nothing without us. If 41 of us say, no, we're not passing anything until the border is secured, guess what? Democrats will wake up and secure the border. But we don't use our power effectively. We abdicate. In the Senate, the same thing happens. 10 liberal, big government Republicans vote with the Democrats, and the Democrats get what they want. But now Mike Johnson's voting with a minority of his party. He's the leader of his party, and he's not voting with the majority of the Republicans were for a warrant requirement. The majority of the Republicans were not for having a deficit of $1.5 trillion, and yet he's siding with the Democrats. That's ineffective leadership. And if he wants to remain Speaker, frankly, he's going to do better because, I wanted to give him a break, and I have for a couple months. This is the first time I've really spoken out. But the Speaker's got to be a Speaker. He's got to be a leader of his party, not a capitulator to the other party.
What about leadership in the Senate? Who would you like to see replace Mitch McConnell?
Anyone at this point would be better because he now has decided that Ukraine and
So Senate leadership has changed, actually for the better. Would be great to have Rick Scott, but much better leadership. Matt Gaetz could easily become Speaker of the House. You do have some political adversaries who would vote against him. The rebuttal would be, oh my God, he's accused of some terrible things. And the response initially should be, well, why wasn't he charged? He wasn't charged, like Elon Musk said, because there was no evidence. Most of the allegations, not all, tie or correlate to what Hunter was accused of, which we have possible evidence in the form of videos and a whole bunch of things, photos, possible evidence, and a laptop that 50 intelligence officials lied about. So the same Democrats who were defending Hunter are now going after Matt Gaetz. The problem is that you could have easily indicted Hunter on a bunch of things, from illegal narcotics to a whole bunch of things, because there's evidence there. There's evidence there. Here you have just pure allegation without any evidence from a criminal standpoint, just like Trump, just like George Stephanopoulos and ABC News were lost the defamation case because there was no criminal evidence against Trump. Therefore, you couldn't accuse Trump of a specific crime. Okay, and the jury actually did not find that Trump committed that specific crime. The civil case jury, which is bizarre that they would be deciding what Trump did from a criminal sense. But Trump won a defamation case because he was not convicted, Trump, yes, he won a defamation case because he was not convicted in a criminal court of a specific crime. By the way, the same type of crime, by the way, that Joe Biden was accused of, and Democrats didn't care. Democrats did not care. He was accused literally of the same thing the jury found, I believe. And, of course, the Times and others went after the accuser. So Democrats go after the accuser when it suits them, then pontificate about how you should believe people. Basically, what they mean is believe anyone who's going after a Republican, never believe anyone going after a Democrat. That's how they roll. Their motto, the way they are, is that they want to pontificate and judge and preach, pretending that they have the moral high ground when they live in glass houses, and you have 90s musicians with depraved parties who always say vote Democrat. Okay, he was, by the way, that 90s musician backed Clinton, backed Biden. Okay, was praised by a CNN panel and a whole bunch of people. So on the left. So spare me the condemnation of Matt Gaetz. He was never convicted of anything. There wasn't even enough evidence to charge him. And from Bob Menendez to a whole bunch of Democrats and musicians and Democratic donors and Hollywood producers, it's an endless pit of depravity and immorality on the left as they pontificate about morality. Anyway, let's continue. This is Matt Gaetz. You could, if you hear him now, you could easily see him becoming Speaker of the House.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We are gathered here at the headwaters of the majestic Florida Everglades, and one thing's for sure, I prefer the swamps of the Sunshine State far more than the swamp of Washington, D.C. My amazing wife, Ginger, and I consider it a blessing from God to call Florida home. But more and more, it feels like Florida is the world's greatest refugee camp. We have tax refugees who love our constitutional prohibition against a personal income tax. We have climate refugees who enjoy our beautiful shimmering oceans and our warm, inviting sands. We have political refugees, too, from communist governments in Cuba, Venezuela, New York, and California. New York's too much when you're draining that swamp, and when the water level comes down, they hiss and bite and rattle around a little crazy. Now, I know I have taken a little bit of criticism this past month. Even the Wall Street Journal led with this editorial headline: "The Gates of Republican Hell." Keep in mind, this is the first regime change the Wall Street Journal editorial board has ever opposed. Maybe they would have been happy if I'd have found an extremist Sunni Muslim to become House Speaker. I understand why some of the rhinos and establishment Republicans are upset. People like Mitt Romney and Liz Cheney used to be important. Now, they are leaving the governance of the Republican Party to the actual Republicans. For too many years, the Republican Party was controlled opposition. Amnesty for illegal immigrants, intervention overseas, and selling out to corporate America drove.
So the intervention overseas is something that makes Trump, the opposition to the intervention overseas is what makes Trump unstoppable. You have people like John Bolton, who, by the way, if you look at the Wikipedia page, did not, let's just leave it at this, did not fight in Vietnam, although he could have. And then gave a bizarre excuse for not doing so. Very bizarre excuse. But here you have a person who was always in support of interventionist foreign policy, sending Americans everywhere around the world, didn't fight in the Vietnam War, still says that the Iraq War he would do it all over again, he would push for it all over again. This is the type of person who thinks that he's a thorn in the side of Trump. See, when Dick Cheney or when Bolton or when Liz Cheney oppose Trump, that makes Trump stronger. You'd have to be a complete buffoon and imbecile not to realize this. When you have people who are consistently on the wrong side of history, who are extremely militant and continuously want military interventions and quagmires, the average American who says, well, I might not really like Trump's personality, but at least he's the less militant choice. And in that case, the morally superior, the moral imperative. Democrats love to say that it's about morality. Well, if your morality is just fine with Dick Cheney voting for Kamala Harris after Harris didn't win a primary and Biden won the primary, or after Bernie Sanders was completely railroaded in his primary. If that's your morality, ending, funding endless wars, that's your morality. You know, you have Jon Stewart. He did a great thing for veterans, or he's, you know, big advocate, but like he always votes Democrat. Doesn't he understand that they're the militant choice compared to Trump? That Trump is the least militant? That he's the anti-war choice? So if you care about America's soldiers and their families and the veterans, don't you want a president that would not send Americans to never-ending military conflict? So like Jon Stewart did a great thing, doesn't understand though, like did a great thing for veterans. I've never been in the military, so I respect the sacrifice of men and women in this country who go and fight for our freedoms. And I don't want to send them off to never-ending counterinsurgency conflicts. I wouldn't vote for a political party that says, fund this government department. Oh, by the way, let's send Americans off to never-ending military conflict. So there are repercussions, mentally, physically, emotionally, that we have to take care of as a country when they come back. But why send them there in the beginning? So it's like completely different people, John Bolton and Jon Stewart, completely different people, but shows exactly why the Democratic Party's dysfunctional. You have John Bolton siding with, potentially voting, I think he might have even voted, I'm not sure if he did, but siding with the Democratic Party, a spokesperson for the Democratic Party, and a Hollywood comedian or Hollywood celebrity, The Daily Show, you know, very staunch Democrat, both of whom, in one way or another, support never-ending military conflict with the Democratic Party. It was President Obama who destabilized Libya. It was Bush, Cheney, and Rumsfeld who destabilized an entire region, sent Americans to never-ending military conflict, even when, you know, militarily we weren't ready at that very moment. And so that's why Marjorie Taylor Greene, if you're a liberal Democrat, you look at Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene, you say, oh my God, they're horrible people. They didn't destabilize Libya. Your political side and President Obama did. And when I say destabilize, you never see a liberal Democrat visiting Libya. Why? Because after what President Obama did, ousting the dictator there with a failed coup or intervention, you had that country destabilized for an entire generation now. But let's continue.
Of the agenda, well, those days are over. The Make America Great Again movement is ascendant. Mike Johnson is House Speaker, and Donald John Trump will be the next President of the United States. And I'm not going anywhere. To my doubters, I have this question. Did people actually believe we were going to take power away from a corrupted person like Kevin McCarthy, and the swamp creatures would just like it? Did you expect them to pack up and move? The lobbyists who owned Kevin McCarthy were never going to thank us on the way out the door. They weren't eager to leave their mud holes in the Speaker's office, but an extermination was necessary. And when there's an extermination going on, it can get a little grisly. Sometimes you don't want to watch the extermination happen, but you know the job must be done. Florida swamp drainers often endure bites and scratches and venom. All I had to endure was a little bit of Mark Levin and Judge Jeanine. But you notice those Fox News hosts really do seem to like our new speaker. Funny how that works. I'm sure glad they like the result. Some people called me vile, crazy, an agent of chaos. And that was just the congressional Republicans. They said far worse about me than they ever did Jack Smith or Ali Mayorkas or Merrick Garland or Christopher Wray or even Joe Biden. And by the way, Joe Biden deserves impeachment and Hunter Biden deserves a damn subpoena.
So why didn't Republicans demand congressional testimony from Hunter? Because the Republican Party, the party itself is a weak political party. The Democrats actually have a very strong political party. They're terrible at governing. Okay, I think Harris also wasted like $1.5 billion. The Democrats laid off, fired a whole bunch of staffers or laid them off right before the holidays. Typical, wonderful, morally superior liberal Democrats, fantastic people. But they lost everything politically because, and then they still have overwhelming media support, but nobody trusts media anymore. The average American doesn't trust media. They don't trust Congress. They don't trust Washington. But they like Trump because he's not a part of the establishment. He definitely is not. And there were attempts on his life. Interesting how the rule of law Democrats don't really care about that. And they make absurd, stupid leaps of logic. Trump tried to foment a rebellion. Trump was a Kremlin operative. If you disagree with U.S. foreign policy, you are serving the interests of our adversaries, even though President Obama came in with a Russian reset with Hillary Clinton hitting a giant button. So what changed? You still had invasions right before President Obama took office and during President Obama's tenure. Actually, in 2012, it was President Obama who told Mitt Romney the 80s want their foreign policy back. You had journalists losing their lives in that country. Also, the Democrats didn't care. So it's like, if you don't know much about politics initially, and you're perhaps socially liberal, initially the left-leaning pundits, they seem maybe more, more logical or rational at that point. But then you realize, my God, the duplicity, the disingenuous, dishonest, absurd, stupid leaps of logic. And the more you know about politics, the less likely you'd become a Democrat or vote Democrat. If you're in a bubble and even you could be extremely educated, but if you're in a bubble and you don't know, you don't care how classified data was transferred onto private secret servers, or you don't care about never-ending military conflict, or you don't care about, endless military entanglements. If foreign policy is not like your big concern, then Democrats are okay for you. But if you care about foreign policy, there's no way you'd vote Democrat.
Oh no! Those rhino Republicans were so mad at me, but my sin wasn't deficit spending the dollar away or...
Tony, thank you very much. Tony, to my super chat and the members, thank you so very, very much. Tony, thank you. Greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate it, Tony. Thank you.
Opening the border or arresting my political opponents, I did something far worse. I demanded that Republican congressmen actually keep their word to Republican voters. I guess I define chaos a little differently. To me, chaos is no budget. Chaos is an unaccountable administrative state. Chaos is a weaponized federal agency, everything from the DOJ to the FBI to the ATF, and I would defund every last damn one of them if we don't get them back on the side of our people. Chaos!
30 years ago, this would be a leftist. This man would be a passionate, energetic, or passionate, popular, left-leaning politician. He would be on the fringe of the Democratic Party. Or, even some mainstream Democrats have spoken in the same way Matt Gaetz has. But see, what happened is the true authoritarians are liberal pundits who say, these conservative pundits, they were given money by the Kremlin. No, they weren't. Read the indictment. if anything, they were duped. This is just one example that people might know or might not know. So you have people saying they were taking money to further right-wing talking points. Like, you're an imbecile if you believe that. Number one, the people with the greatest, well, I should say, certain individuals with very big platforms, they have big platforms oftentimes, sometimes because they're honest and genuine, okay? And they truly believe what they say. I'm not going to get into like the specifics, but there is one or two large political, say conservative, generally deemed conservative YouTubers who were not part of any indictment, but were linked in some way to the indictment of a company that was then taking somehow a company that was linked to money from the Kremlin. Okay. The response by Democrats or liberal pundits in a disingenuous, dishonest, deceitful, sinister way was, oh, they're taking money to oppose the Democratic Party's foreign policy, because anybody who opposes Democrats and anybody who opposes our current foreign policy is doing the bidding of our adversaries. You'd have to be a complete fool and imbecile to believe that. Number one, the people opposed to U.S. foreign policy, let's say they're conservative pundits, almost always have those positions and have those viewpoints before any alleged influence by anyone indicted or whatever. You can't accuse somebody of having an opinion contrary to your own opinion because it serves the interest of another country, and therefore they're doing the bidding of another country. That's exactly the most. Has zero logic, or it's completely irrational, and it's disingenuous. Okay, because there are left-leaning pundits who also have the antithesis of foreign policy objectives. Okay, one top left-leaning pundit said we deserved the worst day in American history. How does that not further the interests of all of our adversaries throughout the world? Yet they don't make that kind of correlation. So if you disagree with Democrats, you're furthering the interests of our adversaries. And of course, your thought process and your intent was not because you actually came up with a rational, logical, reasonable viewpoint. It was because you were influenced by the Kremlin. By the way, if you haven't noticed the past 8 years, anything that opposes Democrats is influenced by Putin. Anything.
Chaos is voting on funding the whole government all at once. Politicians not naming post offices or passing messaging bills for 22 days is not chaos. By electing Mike Johnson Speaker of the House, we will bring order out of the chaos of Washington.
Well, this was in 2023, so this was right after he ousted McCarthy. So there were high hopes for Johnson. In all fairness to Johnson, he's out as speaker, no doubt, and this will be another type of, civil war within the Republican Party. But he was being generous here. It turned out that whereas he was perhaps more populist in certain ways than Kevin McCarthy, he wasn't nearly aligned enough with Trump and populist Republicans.
In D.C.
And by the way, populist Republicans are against never-ending military conflict. How on earth is that not a moral imperative? My God.
I know what I'm fighting for, and America is not the world's piggy bank. There is no shame in wanting to put the people who live in this country first. I care more about the people in East Palestine, Ohio, than is making life unaffordable for so many. Inflation has gotten so bad that foreign governments can no longer bribe Democrat senators with U.S. cash alone. They have to send gold bars just so that the bribes hold value. But it's our fellow Americans who are spending more than $700 a month more than they were just 2 years ago. for the same goods and services. 61% of this country right now, including probably many of you, living paycheck to paycheck. But when the paycheck doesn't stretch for the pay period, more Americans are turning to credit cards. Our debt is driving up the APR on those credit cards, and we now see more delinquencies than at any other time in the last decade. This inflation crisis is happening because we have a corrupt system where money is spent without itemized review. Just imagine if your wife turned to you and said, "Quick, let's spend $100,000 right now for the next year, or we have no food." The budget process is like this because powerful people buy off politicians to have influence. Our chaos, our challenges, are nothing more than their next lobbying contract. I had no choice but to make the change we made because of the challenges and the gravity of those challenges that we face. Joe Biden is sleepwalking us into 1 or 2 or 3 wars, all while soiling his pants on the way to meet the Pope. Trump gave up.
If you find that, disrespectful, and you're a Democrat watching, why didn't Democrats stay with Biden? And you can answer that in the comments. Why didn't they stay with Biden? He's the most popular candidate of all time. You're a denier if you disagree. The same Democrats calling people deniers, which is a term utilized for the most barbaric and evil and diabolical moment in world history. But the same people calling Trump, people, anyone who agrees with Trump about 4 years ago, deniers, are the same people who ousted and removed. George Clooney even wrote about how Biden should step down, but he got 80 plus million Americans. What happened? What happened in 4 years? He was infinitely more popular than President Obama, Joe Biden. He couldn't even fill a library if he was speaking. And then less than 4 years later, they replace him with somebody who was even less popular? How does that even work? But you're a denier if you're suspicious about anything.
Peace through strength, and Biden gives us war without winning. But all of this weirdness, he's been scratching and sniffing his way through the presidency. You deserve better. You gave the donations, you knocked the doors, you made the calls, and you elected a Republican House of Representatives. I figured it was about time we started acting like Republicans again. When I first ran for Congress, my campaign theme was Fight Washington, Restore America. Now, fighting Washington hasn't won me all that many friends in Congress. Far from it. I can't seem to keep a food tester. 3 died on me last week. But fighting Washington has won us a new conservative speaker. Fighting Washington has shown the swamp creatures that they don't win every time, and they're not going to keep getting away with breaking their promises and paying lip services to the true conservatives, making sure we win elections. Fighting Washington has restored some modicum of power back to we the people. And I'm just getting started.
So he'll either be Speaker of the House or Senator or a special prosecutor in the next special counsel against the billion Democrats. He'll do something because the allegations will only hold up for so long. See, part of me says he should, President Trump should have stuck with McCarthy, even though Pam Bondi's better. But you want to have this big hearing and all that. Okay, if there was no evidence to charge Matt Gaetz, and you're going to have a new attorney general anyway, would be Matt Gaetz, or new presidency anyway, you can't capitulate anymore. Democrats are the epitome of people who throw stones living in glass houses. So, why capitulate? Oh, you see what Matt Gaetz is accused of? It's like, well, you were defending Hunter 2 seconds ago. And there's a laptop, and there's emails, and not only bribery and graft, but everything else associated with that. You defended Bill Clinton, you defended Hunter, you defended Joe Biden. And, well, but you're against Matt Gaetz because you're moral. Oh, got it.
Back in January, joined by the outstanding Byron Donalds and the indomitable Anna Paulina Luna, we demanded institutional change. Changes like single-subject spending bills, a vote on congressional term limits, a vote on a balanced budget amendment, reduced spending to pre-COVID levels, and a full and complete release of the January 6 tapes.
So because Kevin McCarthy wouldn't do all of that, okay, that's why that's why he lost his speakership. And because Mike Johnson will still not really do any, like, a lot of that or most of that. It's like every 4 years or every 2 years there's going to be a new speaker. And I just don't get it too. Like, how does it, what kind of repercussions, what would be the repercussions by taking a populist Republican position as Speaker of the House when most of the Republican Party is now Trump populist Republican? I don't get it. And the only thing populist means is you're anti-war. That's it. That's it. It doesn't mean you're biased and you're emboldening these voices. This is all nonsense from the left that emboldens the most sinister voices under the guise of trying to oppose them, which is also complete nonsense. The only reason you would know any of the most bigoted people on the planet is because Democrats plaster their name all the time, serve as their public relations department, and then say, look, these people like Trump. It's like, no, they don't. They have nothing to do with Trump at all. They have zero to do with Trump. That's why Democrats lost the popular vote. They live in this fantasy world where they're the protagonists of this, like, saga of their own creation.
These are the things that conservatives agree on, but we have got to stop talking and start doing. Congressional leadership, they sat me down before all this and said, I just lacked patience. But it seemed more to me that they lacked courage. And now one of them lacks keys to the Speaker's office. I want to spend all of my time fighting.
So, by the way, this is the confrontation one of the confrontations that ousted McCarthy.
it again.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have the same type of, thank you, by the way, Breeze Lover, hello, thanks, H.A. Gaetz is a grace. He does, very much so. We are going to have, ladies and gentlemen, and I do appreciate your support, Breeze, everybody here, Paul, everyone here to my super chat, thank you. You're going to have the same type of situation that you had last year. Okay, last year you're going to have the same type of situation. It's going to be the same thing all over again, which will be very interesting. Matt Gaetz should be Speaker of the House. This is how it happens. It's not rocket science. There's a privileged resolution releasing all the information hidden from the American public about the $17+ million in funding to silence lawsuits and accusations against Democrats and Republicans. End of story. Very simple. That's either it should be disclosed to the American people immediately, but politically, Gaetz could say, hey, you know what? You don't want it disclosed. I'm Speaker of the House. Whatever. I would rather have it. I would rather have it disclosed to the American people. And he gets all the support. He gets the support from President Trump. If President Trump publicly on Truth Social says, "Hey, Gaetz should be Speaker of the House," you have Elon Musk saying Gaetz should be Speaker of the House. Vivek Ramaswamy. You have a whole bunch of other people saying Gaetz should be Speaker of the House. I don't see what the problem is. He was not charged with any crime. You have to charge people. Right now, Joe Biden and Matt Gaetz are the same people, accused of the same. Actually, Joe Biden was accused of one of the most despicable things you've ever heard of in your life right before he became president. It is public record. And Democrats and media descended upon the woman making the allegation. And had hit pieces, gossip, hearsay. Oh, she was, trying to say that the person made the allegation because of money. I mean, they're despicable. But Joe Biden should be president for 4 years. Lord knows what's going on even now. But Matt Gaetz shouldn't be Attorney General. Oh, okay. Oh, because Attorney General, you should have no accusations. But Joe Biden had an accusation. So how does that work? How does that work? And that's a specific, that's an accusation that didn't lead to a criminal charge, but there was a police report filed, so, okay. And there was actually, the main thing, okay, not just, okay, forget about that. The issue was, because there was a police report filed in another case, but the issue was that there was a Larry King Live segment with the mother of the accuser. A Larry King Live how do you go back in time and then accuse Joe Biden? You take the DeLorean back in time and then accuse Biden? That's a lot more evidence than anything leveled against Matt Gaetz. But anyway, hit subscribe to this channel. Merry Christmas, everybody. God bless you. Happy New Year, people. And thank you, everybody, for just hitting subscribe and being awesome. And what can I tell you other than God bless you all. Stay safe. Thank you for getting this channel close to 300,000. We'll be over 300,000 soon. It's because of you. I appreciate each and every one of you, ladies and gentlemen. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year and Happy Holidays. Please be safe on the roads. Please be safe on the roads. Every year you hear about, people losing their lives on the roads during Christmas or during New Year's or during Thanksgiving. It's really terrible. And just drive responsibly and also understand that, there are people who unfortunately are not driving responsibly and you have to be careful. So stay safe. God bless you all. See you tomorrow.